it meant that one day you're summoned before government panel, even though you haven't committed to your repeated question about your political views, accused of disloyalty, and asked to incriminate your friends and associates. If you don't cooperate, you risk jail or losing your job. This is exactly what happened in the United States in the 1915 as a part of the campaign to expose suspected communists. Named after its most notorious practitioner, the phenomenon known as Marxism destroyed thousands of lives and careers. Overall, in the name of protecting them. During the 1930s and 1940s, there have been active but small Communist Party in the United States. Its record was mixed, where it played a crucial role in wide struggles for labor and civil rights. It also supported union. From the start, the American Communist Party faced attacks from conservatives and business leaders, as well as from liberals who criticized its ties oppressive regime. During World War II, when the USSR allied against Hitler, some American communists actually spied for the Russians. Escalated and disabled. Domestic communism came to be seen as a threat to national security, but the attempt to eliminate the threat soon turned into the longest-lasting and most wide episode of political repression in American history. Spurred on the net bureaucrats, politicians, journalists, and businessmen. The campaign rather exaggerated the danger of communist subversion. The people behind the harassed and left-of-center political views were associating with those who did. If you hung modern art on your walls, had motor ratios, or signed petitions against nuclear weapons, you might just be a communist. Starting in late 1940s, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover used the resources of his agency to hunt down such supposed communists and eliminate them from any position influence within society. The narrow criteria that Hoover and his allies used to screen federal employees spread to the rest of the country. Soon, Harvard Studio, universities, car manufacturers, and thousands of other employers were imposing same political tests on the men who worked for them. Meanwhile, Congress conducting its own witch hunt. Hundreds of people to testify before investigative body, like the House Un-American Activities Committee. If they refused to cooperate, they could be jailed for contempt, or more commonly, fired and blacklisted. Ambassadors Richard Nixon and Joseph McCarthy used such hearings as a partisan weapon, accusing Democrats, soft and communist, and deliberately losing China to the communist bloc. McCarthy, a Republican senator from Wisconsin, became notorious by flaunting every changing list alleged communists within State Department. Egged on by other politicians, he continued to make outrageous accusations while disturbing, fabricating evidence. Lord McCarthy were others praised him. And when the Korean War broke out, Marcus seemed vindicated when he became chair of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation. In 1953, Marcus's recklessness increased. It was his investigation of the army, public opinion against him, and diminished his power. Marcus's colleagues and Senate censored him, and he died less than 3 years later, probably from alcoholism. Marcus's ended as well. It had ruined hundreds, thousands of lives, drastically narrowed the American political spectrum. Its damage to democratic institutions long-lasting. In all likelihood, Democrats and anti-communist purges were deeply unjust, but feared the directly opposing them careers. Even the Supreme Court failed to stop WeChat to condone serious violations of constitutional rights in the name of national security. Was domestic communism an actual threat to the American government? Perhaps the small one, but the reaction to it was so extreme that it caused far more damage than the threat itself. Indeed, demagogues appeared in uncertain times to attack unpopular minority and patriotism. Could it all happen? Yeah. Bond culture. Of course I know. It was a mistake. The presidency of the United States of America is often said to be one of the most powerful positions in the world. But of all accused of misusing that power, only one has left office as a result. Does Richard Nixon deserve to be remembered for more scandal ended his presidency? Find out as we put Richard Nixon. Hola. Now, who is the defendant today? Some kind of clock? No, Your Honor, this is Rich Milhouse Nixon, the 37th President of the States, who served from 1969 to 1974. Hold on. As we are none of we the President served. Where you see President Nixon resigned for the good of the nation and pardoned President Ford, who took over. He resigned because he was also impeached, and he didn't face crime exposed. What with the crimes? Your Honor, the Watergate was one of the grossest abuses in history. Nixon's mom broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Wait. Yes, Your Honor. Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and signed National Environmental Species Act? Resentment of civil Speaking on civil rights, the prosecution may be surprised he signed Title IX amendment banning gender-based discrimination in education and ensure desegregation of schools occurred peacefully, and he wrote billing to 18 students after 4 shot by the National Guard state Nepal, protesting the Vietnam War, a war he had campaigned on ending, but he did end it. He ended it 2 years after taking office. Meanwhile, his campaign had sabotaged President peace talk, as the incensed Vietnamese government to hold a supposed better term, which I meant that didn't materialize. 3 years in which 20,000 more troops and over 1 million Vietnamese died for nothing. A president can't interfere negotiations. Isn't that treason? It is, Your Honor, a clear violation of the Logan Act of 1799. I think we forget President Nixon's manifold achievement. It was he who normalized ties with China, forcing economic contact continue today. Are we so sure that's a good thing? And don't forget support the democratic elected President Allende is a brutal military dictator. He was a propaganda against communism. Tyranny reason we opposed communism to begin with was just a fear of the lower class rising above. President Nixon could never predict the violence of Pinochet's regime, and the communists did neglecting the poor. He proposed guaranteed basic income for all American families, still a radical concept today. And he even pushed for a comprehensive healthcare reform, just a kind of the past. Your Honor, President Nixon allowed or two. But what was the real harm? The harm to democracy itself. To the law. Many politicians have compromised some principles to achieve a result, and the law-breaking and the cover-ups the nation built on. Those who do so may find that their integrity tainted, and history is put on trial. What? Men are watching runaway trolley burning down tracks straight toward five bikers who can't escape. He happened to standing next to a switch. They brought trolley and to secure. Here's a problem. That truck has a worker on too, but just one. What do you do? This is a truly problem. A version of an escort drama that philosopher debates 1960 is popular because it poses how to choose when there's no good choice. Repeat action. Best outcome. Stick to moral code. Prohibit causing someone death. In one survey, about 19% of respondents said it's okay to one worker die to save five. In other studies, including a virtual reality simulation of the drama of its result, the judgment, a consistent philosophical principle, utilitarianism, which argues more decisions that maximize well-being. The five lives are weight, even if achieved. Exactly the same, lose one life to save five. But in this case, only about 10% of people say that it's okay to throw the man onto the track. Our instinct to deliberately causing someone's death is to die as a collateral damage. It just feels wrong, for reasons as explained. This intersection between ethics and psychology was interesting about third problem, the drama in variation. People doing such experiment. In a virtual reality study, people were more willing to sacrifice men than women. Researchers have studied brain activities of people seeking through the classic and bridge versions. Both scenarios activate involved in conscious decision-making, emotional responses, but in the bridge version. response is much stronger. So as activity in the area of brain associated with processing internal conflict. Why the difference? An explanation is that pushing someone is more personal, activating emotional to killing another person. It's a logical choice. Truly alleges criticizes some philosophers and psychologists. They argue that rebel anything. A new technologies is making that escape analysis more important. For example, travel escape may have to handle chases, small accidents to prevent large ones. Meanwhile, the government is researching autonomous military drones that could wind up in the institution of the casualties. If we want this action to be ethical, we have to decide in advance how to value human life and judge the greater good. The researchers who study autonomous systems are collaborating with philosophers to address the complex problem of programming ethics into machines. Hypothetical dramas can wind up an collision course is the real world. In 1905, psychologists Alfred Binet and Fred Simon designed a test for children who were struggling in school in France, designed to determine which children required individualized detention methods of the IQ test. In the late 19th century, researchers hypothesized that cognitive ability like working memory and visual spatial skill reflected an underlying general intelligence, or G factor. Simon Binet designed a battery of tests to measure these abilities as a single school. Questions adjusted each age groups. Child score reflected how relative to others, dividing someone's score by their ages, multiplying 100 as their intelligence quotient, or IQ. Today, a score of 1, the average of sample population with 68 scoring within 15.100. Non-binary general intelligence. There is no single group definition of general intelligence, and that left the door open people to use the test in service of their own preconceived assumption about intelligence. But instead, a way to identify those who need academic help. Another way, often in service of deeply flawed ideologies. One of the first large-scale implementation occurred in the United States During World War I, the military used to recruit, screen them, officer training. At that time, many people believed in eugenics, the idea that desirable and undesirable genetic traits could and should be controlled in humans through the breeding. There are many problems, among them the idea that fixing inherited certain person under the influence of eugenics scientists is a result of the military initiative to make erroneous claim that certain racial groups intellectually superior to others, without taking into account the group-tested or new immigrants in the state who lacked formal education or English language exposure. They created erroneous In 1924, the state of Virginia of people with low IQ Supreme Court following the Holocaust, the Civil Rights Movement discriminatory uses IQ tests, scientific grounds, beyond environmental impact. For example, as IQ tests were periodically recalibrated over the 20th century, new generations scored consistently higher. When the Flynn effect happened much too fast, because in evolutionary, instead the cause was likely environmental, improved education, better healthcare, and better nutrition. In the mid-20th century, psychologists also attempted to use IQ tests to evaluate things like general intelligence, particularly schizophrenia, depression, and psychiatric conditions. A practice writer research the finding that not yield concrete useful information. Today, IQ tests employ similar design as the R test. We have to better techniques to identify the potential bias in tests. They are no longer used to diagnose psychiatric conditions, but similarly problematic programs using subtest scores is still sometimes used to diagnose learning disabilities. Many experts, psychologists around the world still use the IQ test to identify intellectual disability, and the result can be used to determine appropriate education support, job training, and IQ test results have been used to justify horrific policy and scientifically based ideologies. That doesn't mean test itself authors, in fact, good job of measuring reasoning and problem-solving skills, but that isn't the same thing as measuring a person's potential. Though there are many complicated historical, scientific, and cultural issues, one more researcher, manga. Thank you. The numerical score. Speaking of questionable testing practice, should we get the latest standards ST altogether? Find out that these tests actually measure bad decibel or learn more about informants and optimistic worship this video. When the ribbon changed in 1955, he cut this progressive religious movement through in popularity. Suppose San Francisco. But in 1977, abuse. John the commune Johnson in Guyana. Utopian paradise. The colony was more like a prison camp. When the congressional delegation arrived to investigate the conditions, Jones executed his final plan. 900 died after being poisoned flavored. That grisly image has since been immortalized as shows how single-minded today. There are thousands of cults around the world. It's important to know two things about them. First, not all cults are religious. Some are political, therapy-based effects on self-improvement or otherwise. And then flip side, not all new religions. What we're referring to as a cult. So what exactly find in one understanding of cults, and why do people join them? Broadly speaking, a cult is a group of movement with a shared commitment to usually extreme ideology that typically embodies a charismatic leader, and were hesitant deadly as Johnstown, the Heaven's Gate, mass suicide of 39 people in 1990. Most cults share some basic characteristics. A typical cult requires a higher commitment with its members in maintaining a strict hierarchy as suspect supporters and recruits and working. It clearly answers this question with dicta. Lambda requires the recipe from change. A new member of True River. Most importantly, it uses both formal and informal systems, influence and control. Obedient, with little tolerant, internal disagreement, external scrutiny. You might wonder, some of these descriptions apply to established religions. In fact, the word cult originally described who cultivated worship certain god by performing rituals, maintaining, and in time it came to mean access to worship. To the fabric of the religious school. And then providing guidelines for members to live better lives. A cult directly control them for personal to financial assets and living arrangements. Cults are demand obedient to human leaders. They have persuasive people with a sort motivated by money, sex, power, or all three. Cult uses personal charisma to attract initial followers. Further expansion works like a pyramid scheme, with early members recruiting new ones. Cults are skilled at knowing whom to target, often focusing on a neutral area, or whoever listens undergoing personal or professional loneliness and desire from many, like one susceptible, friendly people community. Sometimes taking months to establish a relationship. In fact, more than 2,000 cult members are recruited by friends, family members, or co-workers, whose invitations are harder to refuse. Once in cults, members subjected to multiple forms of indoctrination. Some by a natural inclination mimic or form others. This baby maintenance using techniques guilt, shame, and fear, and in many cases that they belong to entertain from the world. From the reward, the cult environment discourages critical thinking, making both doubt in everyone around you and mothering absolute faith. There is an internal conflict known as cognitive dissonance, keeps you trapped. Each compromise makes it painful to admit you've been deceived. And though most cults don't, they harmful by denying basic freedom, the thought, speech, association, cause stumped psychological and emotional growth, a particular problem for children who are deprived of normal developmental activities and milestones. Nevertheless, many cult members eventually find a way out. As the realization they have a woman the cult due to external pressure and scandals. Many cults may be hard to identify and how strange are produced, but when the practices involve harassment, threat, irregular activities, or abuse, the law can intervene. Believing in something should not come at cost. The man tells you to sacrifice your relationship or morality for the greater good. They're most likely exploiting you for their own. Yes, you and a fellow castaway desert island playing dice for the last banana. I read on this rosary. 2 dice. Biggest number 9, 2, 3, or 4. Player 1. 8. If the biggest number 5 or 6, player 2 wins. Let's try twice more. Here, player 1 wins. And here it's player 2. So who do you wanna be? First glance may seem like player 1 has the advantage, assuming if anyone for a number is the highest, but actually player 2 has an approximately 56% chance of winning each match. Unless this possible combination by rolling 2 dice, and then each player wins. Possibilities of a bullseye. Each serving chart shows a possible combination of both dice. If we roll 4 and 5, we mark this a 3 and a 1. Play 1 or victory here. There are 36 possible combinations. Each with exactly the same chance happening. Mathematicians call this equal probable. Now we can see why the first glance was wrong. Even though player 1 has 4 winning numbers and player 2 only has 2, the chance of each number being greatest is not the same. There is chance that 1 the highest, but even such is chance that 6 will be the highest. But if this combination roll, and this any of these combination rolls, player 2 will win. Out of 36 possible combinations, 16 gives victory to player 1, and 20 give player 2. You can think about this way too. The only way can win is if both dice show 1, 3, or 4, or 5 or 6 the player 2. The chance of one die showing 1, 2, 3, or 4 is 4 out of 6. The result of each die roll depends on the calculate gen probability. Chance of getting 1, 2, 3, 4 both dice is 4 out of 6 times 4 out of 6. 16 out of 36. Because someone has to win, the chance of player 2 winning is 36 minus 16 out of 6, or 20 out of 36. That's by making our table. But this doesn't mean that player 2 will win 36 games as a player 2 will win 20 of them. That's why the events like dice rolling are called random. Even though you can calculate the theoretical probability of each outcome, you might get the expected result. We examine just the field bands. But if you repeat those many times frequency specific outcome, like a player 2 win, your approach is the theoretical probabilities. That's why we got writing down all the possibilities and cutting more each outcome. So if you sit on the desert island playing dice forever, player 2 will eventually win 56% of the game, and player 1 will win 44%. But then, banana would be the I cannot understand the reason why you and the Reverend Mah-Jong founded People's Temple in 1955. Few could imagine horrifying this progressive religious movement rose in popularity and gained support some of San Francisco's most politicians. But in 1977, amid brainwashing abuse, Jones moved to several hundred followers to expose the communes of Guyana, built a utopian paradise. The colony was more like a prison camp, and when congressional delegation arrived to investigate its conditions, Jones executed his final plan. On November 1878, 909 men and women and children died after being poisoned Private Aid. That grisly image has since immortalized shorthand slang, single-minded, cutlass thinking. The Kool-Aid. Around the world. It's important to know two things about them. First, not all cults are religious. Some are political, therapy-based, focused on self-improvement worldwide. And on the flip side, not all new religions. What we're referring to as a cult. What exactly defines the modern understanding of a cult? Why do people join them? Broadly speaking, a cult is a movement, shared commitment to usually extreme ideology that typically embody in a charismatic leader, and were few times as deadly as Johnstown or Heaven's Gate, which ended in mass suicide of 39 people in 1907. Most cults share some basic characteristics. A typical cult requires a high level of commitment for its members and maintain a strict hierarchy, separating unsuspecting recruits. It claimed the biggest questions through its doctrine. Among the required recipe for change, a new member to true believer. Most importantly, it uses both formal and informal systems of influence control to keep members obedient, tolerant. You might wonder if this description might also apply to established religions. In fact, the word cultist originally described two people who cultivated the worship certain god. When religion began as a cult, in the fabric of the road, modern cult rather than providing guidelines to live better life. A cult seeks to directly control them for personal and family relationships to financial assets and living arrangement. Cults also demand of obedient human leaders who tend to be highly persuasive people with a certain oneness, sex, and power, or all three. While cult leader uses personal charisma to attract followers, for the expansion was like a pyramid. Earlier members recruiting new ones. Cults are skilled at knowing whom to target, often focusing on those neutral areas who have recently undergone some personal or professional loss. loneliness, and desire for meaning make one susceptible, friendly people, offering community. Can be subtle, sometimes taking months, establish our relationships. In fact, more than 2/3 of cult members are recruited friends, family members, or co-workers with invitation. Once in the cult, members are subject to multiple forms of restoration. Other methods may be more intense, using techniques of coercive persuasions involving and fear. In many cases, members may willingly submit out of desire to wrong and time. Environment discourages critical thinking, making it hard to avoid the absolutely face. The resulting internal conflict, known as copy dissonance, keeps you track. Compromise, more painful to admit you've been deceived. And the most cults don't. By denying basic freedom, speech and associations cause psychological and emotional growth. A particular problem for children who are deprived of normal development and milestone. Nevertheless, many cult members eventually find a way out, either through realizations in relationships or morality. The most likely exploiting you to their own. One, two, three, or four. Player 1 wins. If the biggest number is 5 or 6, player 2 wins. Let's try twice more. Here, player 1 wins. And here, what do you want at first glance? and player 2 only has 2. The chance of each number being the great is not the same. 1 in 36 chance that 1 will be the highest number, but there's an 11 in 36 chance the highest. So if we play 1, player 2 will win. What is 36 plus 16 gives victory 2, and 20 give player 2 the win. You can this way too. The only way player 1 can win. 2, 3, or 4. 5 or 6 and player 2. The chance of one dice showing 1, 2, 3, or 4 is 4 out of 6. The result of each die roll is independent, and calculate the joint probability independent department probabilities. Chance of gaining 1, 2, 3, or 4 on both dice is 16 out of 36. Because someone has to win, the chance of winning is 36 out of 36 minus 16 out of 36, or 20 out of 36. Those are the exactly same probabilities we got by making our table. But this doesn't mean that player 2 will win, or even play 36 games at player 2. You'll win 20 events. That's why events like death rolling are called random. Even though you can calculate the theoretical outcome, you might get the result if it's just a few events. But if you repeat those random events many times, the frequency of specific outcome like a player 2 win, your approach is theoretical. That part will be good writing down all the possibilities and counting up each outcome. So if it's the turn playing dice forever, player 2 will eventually win 56% of the game, and player 1 will win 44%, but banana will be wrong. Kanchan Lichi. I think it was completely my failure. I is consciousness for love. How did we taught the answers to these questions? Someone David because questions no one asks knows the answer to. Sometimes one still our physical relations is even connected distant invisible galaxies. A particle thing the symmetry of the universe. Wonders beyond the imagination. Reading presence here. Multiverse. 1, 0. A number that's no obvious virtual cycle. A tiny fraction trillion even the number is immense compared to natural number. Contains the infinite number of so-called Fourier universe. Well, the print is just nearby stuff. Yes. The layouts. Technology could accelerate just 100 years. In millions of years, intelligent aliens are creating giant energy pools. Well, I think this is completely a mistake. Question: how to build artificial intelligence in destroyers is something that become to pay attention to. It is the deep problem. And other annoying. They are not some problem.